I'm here today to discuss about the Serializer component. I'm Sarah, nice to meet you. And we are going to spend, I think, 30 minutes together to see all the awesome features about these components. So what's the plan? First, seeing what serialization is about. So who knows already what is serialization? OK, most of you. Great. So I'm going to be really, really quick about this part. Then we will see a little bit about the architecture of the components, so how it works. That way you can see how to use it. That's basically the third part of this presentation. So before beginning, I want to tell you a little of the history about this component. Before Symfony 2.7, maybe you use this. This is not a component, but a library called JMS Serializer. I'm still using it, actually, because I'm using Phosphorus bundle. And I'm sure that you are maybe very aware of this library because it's well integrated with Phosphorus. Who is using Phosphorus bundle? Yeah, half of the room. Great. And yeah, so before this version 2.7, we had actually the component serializer, but it wasn't that powerful as the JMS serializer. At some point, maybe at the end of 2015, there was Kevin Douglas. Maybe you know him. He is a core contributor now. He gave some love to the component, actually. And yeah, he contributed a lot on this component. So what happened? Tons of new features, and it keeps counting, actually. There is a better integration with other libraries, which was not the case before. And now we can say that it's as powerful as JMS Serializer, and some people say that it's even better than the JMS Serializer. People are saying this, I'm not sure. Up to you. And that's awesome, because it's already integrated to Symfony. And yeah, you don't have to download a third-party libraries. It's already integrated in Symfony now. You would say, OK, then what happens? API platform. It's quite fancy now. I invite you to see the conference of Kevin Douglas right after me. It's on track B, if you are interested. So it's going to be about this part. So what's serialization? Wikipedia says serialization is the process of translating data, structure, or object state into a format that can be stored and reconstructed later in the same or another computer environment. OK, you say, cool story, bro. Basically, for us, it's just transforming an object to a formatted string and vice versa. OK? So you would say, OK, what kind of formatted string? We could have textual type. You know JSON, XML when you are doing maybe a REST APIs. It's human readable or editable. So most of the time, this is the kind of textual information I use. But you can also have binary formats. It's smaller, faster. And yeah, I invite you to take a look at protocol buffers coming from Google. That way you can use this kind of formats. OK, last thing about serialization is when you should use it as a developer. First thing is send or receive data thanks to an API. When you are creating an API, you want to make sure that when you receive information, it's going to be in a certain format. So deserialize all the things, or serialize data when you want to send information to your user. The other use case could be when you are using messaging systems, like RabbitMQ with the protocol AMQP. You can have also a good way to detect changes, for instance, for your unit test. Instead of testing all the properties of your object, you just have to make sure that your object serialized has all the information you want at once. And the last use case could be if you want to store data in database. Maybe instead of having columns with fields, you will have just all the information in one field. Okay? Most of the time I use the two first use cases because I'm developing some APIs for my customers. And yeah, of course, you should have for all your application some messaging system at some point. So you maybe have this question in mind, like why not using those PHP functions directly? It's basically because it's not easily configurable. And that's why we have the serializer component. All right, so what's going on in the Symfony serializer component? So here is the architecture of how it works. We have, at the beginning, an object, formats. Most of the time, we use serialization, deserialization, and in the middle, there are some things that happens. First, normalizers. It's basically classes that will convert object to an array. Why an array? Because it's a structure that is really easy to understand and manipulate, okay? And yeah, you can normalize or denormalize, okay? The second thing is encoders here. The point is with those classes, going from array to the end format, so the string formatted, or coming from the string formatted to the array. Okay? So basically, when you want to intervene somewhere in the serializer, it's going to be either in the normalizers or in the encoders. Okay? And all of that is the serializer. Okay? So we will see that right after. But first, normalizers. There are some native normalizers in the component, and I'm going to talk about some of them. The first one is the getSet method normalizer. Easy to understand. It's just about making sure that when you take the object, you want to put all the properties in your array. Remember, normalizers goes from object to array or array to object. And yeah, it's going to use all the getters and setters in your entity, for instance. We have the property normalizer that uses reflection. So it's going to basically read the code and see which properties needs to be put in the array or put in the object, okay? We have the custom normalizer, and basically it's yours, because maybe you want to normalize things in a certain way, and you will see later, I will show you how to construct yours. And the last one is the object normalizer, and this one uses property access components. Basically, it's going to see if a property is public. If it's the case, it's going to take it and put it in the array. If the property is private, it's going to use the getters and the setters. Okay? So I would like you to look at the other normalizers by yourself, but there is one that I really want to explain to you today, which is the data URI normalizer. And this one is really cool because it turns SPL, so file info, into data URI. So basically, for people that doesn't know what is data URI, instead of getting the image, downloading it, and display it to the user, we have the image directly encoded in base 64. That way, it's way faster. Okay? So I invite you to use these normalizers. It's already implemented for you, and it's in the component. Let me show you how to use the normalizer. Basically, you are in your code. So here, we are not in Symfony full stack, right? We are using directly the component. We have, of course, the normalizer we want to use, which is that time normalizer. We put some formats. In here, I'm saying, after the normalization, I want to make sure that the string that is going to be in the array will be in the format that time RFC, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Then I'm just instantiating the normalizer with the format that I want, and then call the method normalize with the object that I want to convert to an array. Okay? So at the end, I will have this string in my array. Really easy, right? Same thing with the denormalization. Yeah. Again, you need to instantiate your normalizer, put the format you want, and then just call the method denormalize with the string formatted, and then the type of the object you want after denormalization. Really, really, really easy. OK, that's it for normalizing things. Now it's about encoding things. So going from array to the string formatted or the string formatted to array. So we have some native encoders, and I'm sure that most of the time you will use at least the first two ones if you are developing REST APIs. So yeah, we have JSON, XML, CSV, YAML, and of course you can implement your own by yourself. How to use it? Again, really easy. You just instantiate the encoder, call the method encode. You pass in as a parameter the array of information you had after normalization, and then you get the end formatted string that you want. Same thing with decoding, okay? We have the string formatted, and we want to have the array. So basically, again, instantiate the encoder and call the method decode with two parameters, the string formatted and the format of this string. That way, you know how to decode the string. And yeah, so you have all the code you need to serialize your information. So basically, what you have to do to have your serializer, which is the object you can see at the end of the slide, first you need to register all the encoders, register all the normalizers, and when you instantiate your serializer, two parameters, two arrays of encoders and normalizers. And that's it. You have your serializer. To use it, really easy. Instantiate your serializer that you initiated before. And two parameters, the object you want to serialize, and the format, the end format you want. That way, the component knows which encoder and normalizer you want to use at the moment. And at the end, you have the formatted string. For the deserialization, it's basically quite the opposite. You have to call the method deserialize with the formatted string. The second parameter is going to be the type of the object you want to have at the end of the deserialization. And the last parameter is going to be the format of the string you are passing to the serializer. Okay? So I think at that moment of this presentation, for people that does some serialization for now, you didn't learn that much. Here comes the third part, which is more interesting, I think. But first, I want to give a word about Symfony demo application. Who knows about this application? Not that much. This application is really nice because it's developed by the community. And the point is to show most of the features you can have with Symfony. So let's say you are working with your customers and you want to sell Symfony to them. Instead of doing proof of concepts, you can directly download this application and show how it works, or to maybe teach Symfony to people that are juniors developers. You can send them to that application, and they will see all of the example needed for most of the features we are used to develop. It's quite nice, so take a look at this. And why am I talking about this one? It's basically because all the examples I will talk about, it's on top of this application. Okay? This is a blog application, so it's just managing posts and comments. So you have a UI to display the posts, update the post, delete the post, and show all the posts, okay? So, yeah, what I want here is to add an API to this application, okay? So before even beginning any code, you need to enable the serializer in Symfony full stack. So in your config.yaml file, you just have to add the line you can see here, enable to true. I think by default it's already done, so you don't have to do much. But in here, I added a second line, which is enable annotations, because you will see that every time I'm going to put some configuration, it's going to be done in annotations, okay? But keep in mind that all the configuration I'm going to show you can be done in XML, YAML, or PHP, as usual in Symfony. All right. I think you are really excited. We are going to create an API on top of Symfony, and basically it will be all about serialization and deserialization. So all the stuff I'm going to show you is basically what we saw before. So yeah, we are in our Symfony full stack application. So if you want to create an endpoint to display your post, really easy. You just have to create your action. And OK, you say it's going to be accessible by the URI /API/v1/post. Great. And in there, you just get all the posts you want to serialize, thanks to Doctrine. And after that, you just have to get the serializer. In Symfony full stack, it's a service. So every encoders and normalizers are already set up for you. And you just call the method serialize with 2 parameters again. The object you want to serialize, which is here an array of posts, and the end format, the formatted string you want to get after serialization. And of course, at the end, don't forget to send the response. Really easy, OK? This is the base. And here is the information you should have if you do this kind of stuff in the Symfony demo application. But we have a lot of information here. And yeah, we have the password and the salt, which is not quite OK, not at all. So we will configure, actually, or find some way to remove those information. So at the end, I would like to have this kind of thing. OK, so just the ID, when it's published, the summary and the title for each post. You will see that thanks to configuration, it's going to be really easy. I'm going to give you 4 tips, OK? And maybe a surprise at the end. The first is going to be the group of serialization, then name converter, after the max depth, and we'll see how to add information to our JSON we want to display to our end user. So first, groups of serialization. Really useful when you want to choose which properties you want to serialize or deserialize. Okay? So in our case, we want just to make sure that we don't send information such as passwords, okay? Or other stuff. It could be useful also for security purpose, because according to, let's say, some security rules, you are going to display properties or another. And it's also useful for API versioning, because you know that when you are creating a new API or new application, you have to think about the evolution of your application. You always have to have in mind the versioning of your application. So what you have to do in your code, in here you are in your entity, so it's the post entity, and I just added the add groups annotation there, and you just label the property you want at some point. The label you can see here are completely arbitrary. It's really up to you. But some tip about the naming of the label, keep a naming convention according to what you will pick during the serialization or deserialization. So in here you can see that I have actually 3 labels, 3 different labels. The first one is post-read, then post-list-read, and the last one is post-write. Okay, so in here, yeah.
What's the namespace of the groups notation?
I think it's under the component serializer. I think it's Symfony component serializer and directly groups. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So you labeled all the properties you wanted to use after when you do deserialization. So in here, maybe we are in the action or in a service, and you call the method serialize, on the service. And this time we have a 3rd parameter. I talked about the 2 parameters, which are the object you want to serialize, the format you want to have at the end of the serialization, and in here we have an array called the context. So in there you can put everything you want, but some keys of this array is like reserved for the components. And the one key that is reserved by the component is groups. And when you say groups and the array of all the label you want to use during serialization, During serialization, the component would just pick the properties that has the label you put in your entity, and that's it. Really, really easy. So when you do the serialization, here is the results. You just have the ID, the published at, and so on, according to what you put in your entity. Now, I have some troubles with the name of the properties I have after serialization. In here, you can see that I have lower camel case with the published at here. And most of the time in REST APIs or whatever, you want to have a name convention saying, OK, everything is going to be in snake case. To do this kind of thing, it's really easy. In your config.yaml file, you just have to add this variable configuration, which is called name converter. And in here, you will put a service. And in here, it's already registered by Symfony because it's already in the component. But of course, you can implement your own, OK? And that's it. It works, right? And I know it's awesome. But wait, I have more. There is the max depth, OK? Basically, we have this kind of object. We have a node with child, OK? You don't care about the annotation for now. I'm just talking about the fact that I'm instantiating 4 objects here, N1, N2, N3, and 4, OK? And then I'm going to put every element in the other to construct a tree, OK? So I have N2 and in N1, yeah, N3 N2 in N2, N4 in N3, OK? And yeah, basically when I want to serialize this thing, I will have all of the tree, and maybe sometimes I just have to want just the first leaf, okay? To have this kind of thing, it's really easy. You just have to add the annotation at max depth up there. In here, I put 1 because I just want 1 layer, okay? And when I call the serialize method on the serializer, again, in the context, so the third parameter, which is an array, I'm going to use the special key enable max depth to true. And that way, the component will use directly the configuration you put in your entity. OK? Yeah, I have more, actually. If you want to add more information in your representation of your object after serialization, you can do it really easily with normalizers. I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of this presentation, I told you that we have several normalizers. Normalizers, just to remember, it's coming from object to array, or array to object, OK? So if you want to create your own, it's really easy, and it will allow you to tweak the normalization. So if you want to make sure that when you normalize the object to the array in a certain way and add more information, you just have to create your normalizer. So in here, I'm going to add some computed data to add the total number of comments, and also the canonical URL of the current post. Okay? Maybe you know this kind of thing because it's called hypermedia. For people that knows about REST APIs, I'm talking about the 3rd level of Richardson model. And yeah, thanks to it, you can access this level. So in here, I am in my custom normalizer. So I'm creating a brand new class. I need to implement the normalizer interface. And because I'm implementing this interface, I need to implement the supports normalization method. And in there, I'm just saying, OK, when I'm coming from this kind of object, I can support this type. OK? In here, I'm just saying, OK, I'm going just to manage post. And then I need to implement, of course, the method normalize. And I told you that I'm going to add more information. So first, I need to call the normalize method like it should have been done. OK? In the data variable up there, I will have an array because I'm normalizing things. If I want to add more things, I just have to add one more element in my array. That's basically what I'm doing when I'm doing data, URL, and so on. Okay? And after I want to add another element in my array according to some business logic that I need to implement. So there is somewhere in my class a method called showDisplayComment. And according to the context, remember the context is the 3rd parameters passed in the serialize method. So in there, I showed you the groups and the enable max depth, but you can also pass any elements in this array to help you during normalization or denormalization. Same thing for encoders. And yeah, according to my business logic, I'm going to add more information or not. And at the end, of course, I return the array that was tweaked for my needs. And that's it. Of course, you have to register it as a service and tag it, Serializer, Normalizer. Because if you don't tag it, the normalizer won't be registered in the service Serializer in Symfony full stack. Okay? And that's it. I have my brand new information in my post when I serialize thing. Really easy. I told you that there was 4 tips. I have a 5th one, because if you read the abstract of this talk, I'm talking about circular references. So I know that you are really excited. Yeah? We're still here, or? Yeah? Cool. Awesome. So here is the use case. I have 2 objects. I have my post and, of course, the comments. So the relationship between the 2 entities are one-to-many. Okay? But in here, when I'm doing serialization of this kind of objects, I will have troubles, because when I say it's the serializer component. It's going to try to serialize the post, in there the comment, but in the comment there is post, and in post in comment, and so on. So you have a circular reference, okay? So by default, Symfony will throw an exception, which is not good for your API, right? So yeah, you would say an exception, what can I do? There is a solution. In here, you just have to create a new class called, let's say, Circular Reference. It's completely arbitrary, it's really up to you. But in there, you just have to implement the method invoke. And basically what it does is, when you are going to serialize the post for the first time, it's going to serialize the right way. Then the comment, and in the comment, you have the object post. It will call the method invoke. And at this moment, you will have only the element you are returning in your if statement in here. So instead of serializing again the post, you will have just the URL to the post you want. And that way, it's handled. The second step you need to do is to register it as a service. Okay? And here I'll put some arguments, because yeah, I decided that to return a URL instead of the object. And you have 2 choices. If you are using Symfony 3.3, it's down there. You have directly the environment variable, called Circular ReferenceHandler, and in there you just put the full qualified name of your class you just implemented before. For my case, it's Circular ReferenceHandler. Okay? If you are using Symfony before 3.3, you actually have to register a compiler pass. Okay? All right. So this was all about serialization. Now let's talk about deserialization. The common way of deserializing, remember, it's about having the string formatted and have at the end an object. Okay? I just have, let's say, in my action, in here, I'm saying I need to create a new post. Okay? So I'm going to receive data from the user in JSON, let's say. I'm just going to call the method deserialize on the service serializer. And yeah, at least I have 3 parameters I have to pass, which are the data. The data are the information sent by the user, let's say in JSON. We have the type of the object I want to have at the end of the deserialization. In here, it's an object. The type will be post. And the format of the string that I'm receiving from the user. And maybe you have some business logic or configuration about the serialization group. So you are going just to add the context with the special key groups. Okay? That way, yeah, it's deserialized, and after that you have the object, so you can save it in database and so on. Okay? Of course, you need to validate your data. It's really important to do this kind of thing. So in here, I'm in my action. Let me zoom in for you. The deserialization was done, so I have the objects. I just have to call the method validate on the service validator that will call the component validator. And if you have violations, so let's say errors according to the data that was sent by your user, you just have to, again, serialize all the information coming from the validator and send it to your user. So again, you just have to call serialize method with the object and the format you want at the end. And just don't forget to send the response. And this is basically how you can manage the validation of your data when you do deserialization. Okay? In here, I'm just showing you a custom normalizer again. So in here, I, of course, implement the normalizer interface, implement the method normalize, and yeah, create my array, because normalization, again, is coming from an object to an array. Okay? So yeah, in here, I want to have certain information, and because the users of my API are waiting for certain formatted strings. And that's it. It's done. You have to know that it's already shipped with API platform, so take a look at this library, because most of the normalizers I'm showing you are already implemented in this library. Let's see what happens if the user posts some data that are not valid. You will have this kind of information according to the normalizer you implemented. And if everything went well, yeah, you have all the information like you wanted to. If you want to deserialize information directly into your object, so let's say you want to modify your object. First, you want to get it from Doctrine, thanks to the param converter up there. Instead of deserializing the object and then update all the properties of a new object that you want, of the object you receive from the action, you can actually ask to the serializer to deserialize the data directly in an object that you want. And again, I'm in the array of context. So the special key in my array called object to populate is reserved by the component and says, OK, get all the information you have when deserialized and put that in that object. Okay? That way, it's really quick to develop. Last thing about deserialization, if you want to deserialize an array, just a quick tip. Basically, you call, again, the deserialize method. But in here, what I put is the type here. You just have to concatenate the square bracket to say, OK, I'm going to have an array of posts. So basically, in here, I'm doing, let's say, a bulk import through an API. Okay? I'm going to receive a really big JSON with all of the posts I want to import. Instead of deserializing and having each object and reconstructing, let's say, the array collection by myself, I just have to do this kind of thing. It's really easy. It works. Okay? So, to sum up, because maybe you didn't remember all the things I talked about, all those slides are going to be on speaker deck right after. The first thing is, OK, the architecture is quite easy to understand, and most of the time, as a developer, you just have to implement normalizers. Encoders are basically already developed for you, actually, because most of the time you use JSON or XML, maybe sometimes CSV. So yeah, most of the time normalizers, custom normalizers. What you need also, always use groups. Make sure that you don't display all of the things and let people modify any properties of your objects. Create normalizers for each serialized entity. That way you can manage stuff according, let's say, I don't know, the weather outside or some security stuff. So yeah, thanks to normalizers for each entity, you can manage this kind of thing. And of course, manage circular references, because if you don't manage it, remember, you will have exceptions, which is not cool. And last thing, take a look at the API platform library. It does a lot of stuff for you, and actually it's completely integrated with the serializer component, which is quite cool. So here is my cat Lannister, and he has Twitter, so feel free to follow him. He writes a lot of tweets about what he does. Nothing. I would like to thank Grégoire Pinault because this presentation is based on his. He did this in Paris like a few months ago. And I would like to thank you guys for hearing me.